Audiomatic presents The Cure for Writer's Block by Andrew Mayne.
Writing prompts.
So you've strip-mined your past, combed today's news and gaslighted everyone you know in search of literary gold and still haven't found something. The problem could be that you're being too picky. You're still looking for the perfect story, instead of just a good one. The trouble is that perfect rarely announces itself. It's usually disguised as good or might be interesting. You might be too choosy because you lack confidence in your own ideas. Guess what? We all do. That's why your job is to just pick something that at least on the surface has the potential to be good. If you're still in this situation, I suggest a writing prompt. This is a starting point for a story where you fill in the blanks. As a rule, I think writing prompts are a good way to practice your story weaving capabilities, but if you find that you constantly need them, then maybe your head isn't full of ideas trying to escape. In my personal experience, all of the really great authors I know don't have trouble dreaming up stories. Maybe they started with some difficulty, but after they learned how to release their creativity, their problem is finding the time to bring them all to fruition. Story prompts are training wheels. The sooner you get off them, the better off you'll be. That said, here are a number of ways you can generate somewhat random ideas for stories.
Writing prompts.
Look up writing prompts on Google. You'll find a number of examples. Like this gem, which I've altered to protect the innocent.
Despite the fact that Jill ate all the pie, Lisa couldn't get herself too angry about it.
Or a random sequence of words.
Picnic basket, car crash, stripper pole, drinking fountain, unicorn.
What and why? This is so much better than writing prompts, because all the elements are coming from your twisted brain. Just take any event, headline or thought that crosses your brain and ask,
what if?
And then put something after it. This could be something bonkers. What if Ben Franklin fought vampires? Something mundane. What if a teacher never learned to read? Something messed up. What if your letter carrier was reading your mail? These kinds of prompts can lead to some very interesting places. After you ask, what? Your next step is to ask, why? A lot and then, what? Again. Why is your letter carrier reading your mail? What happens when you find out? The why is the heart of the story. This is the part you show us in your writing. This could be sinister or it could be something else. Maybe the letter carrier is trying to protect you. Maybe she thinks you're a terrorist. Maybe she's in love with you. Twist things? Most stories can be reduced to several basic plots. Spy movies can be reduced to two: a renegade spy from the agency is now the bad guy. Or our hero is now being hunted by his former spy agency. That's basically every Mission Impossible movie and half the recent James Bond movies. What makes them interesting is in how they're told and the choices that are made. You can create something fresh by taking something familiar and putting a new twist on it. This can be just changing up the characters or the outcome. With the Twilight Saga, Stephenie Meyers took a familiar genre, paranormal romance, which Anne Rice had been doing for years, and set it in a high school. Probably the most improbable place for a vampire to hang out, outside Sunnyvale, at least, but a great environment to tell stories to a teen audience. E.L. James, a passionate Twilight fanfiction writer, wrote a story about Bella and Edward having a very adult and kinky relationship, then took away all the vampire elements, leaving behind the other stuff and created 50 Shades of Grey. A huge financial success and fan favorite, if not a literary one, which could be said about Twilight. The Magicians by Lev Grossman is like Harry Potter, only the students attend college, have sex and get high, much like a real college. He took a very familiar story and asked,
what if they were like real college kids?
Change the POV. Sometimes all it takes to come up with a great story is just to shift the point of view. In Wicked, Gregory Maguire gave us a sympathetic portrait of the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz. Maguire was able to use this character in his story because the original book is now in the public domain, whereas E.L. James had to change her Edward and Bella to other characters in 50 Shades of Grey. The character of Dexter Morgan, from Jeff Lindsay's novel Darkly Dreaming Dexter, is a serial killer and the protagonist. Although books like Patricia Highsmith's Ripley novels and Thomas Harris's later Hannibal Lecter books often featured their serial killers in protagonist roles, they were still villains. Lindsay made Dexter a good guy, or at least someone who tried really hard to be good. Just as Anne Rice influenced Twilight and that influenced 50 Shades of Grey, Rice's books were influenced by earlier vampire fiction, but she decided to change the point of view from the vampire hunter to the vampire and found that they had much more interesting lives. A premise Fred Saberhagen also employed in his novel The Dracula Tape 1 year before Rice published Interview with a Vampire in 1976. Changing the POV is such a powerful way to revisit a story, even authors will use it to revisit their own works. Orson Scott Card followed up the hugely popular Ender's Game with Ender's Shadow, the story of a friend of Ender told at the same time. E.L. James rewrote 50 Shades from the point of view of Mr. Grey. The existence of both of these books reinforces the point that characters really matter. Authors can even openly recycle the same damn plot, but put different people into the story and audiences will pay to find out what happens. Summing it up, whether prompted, asking, what? Twisting things or shifting the POV, you should have no trouble coming up with story ideas if you just start asking your brain questions and see where it leads you. Try this, take a story you're familiar with and give it a sideways twist.